Resolutions that we need to pass today so that we can advertise that there be public hearings. So, Trustee Syracuse, if you could read the first one, please.
Whereas according to New York State's property tax cap legislation, if a village government decides to adopt a budget with a property tax levy that exceeds the level set by the state, the village government must pass a local law to override that cap, and whereas adopting said local law is not predictive of the final tax levy, but will provide the Village of Fredonia Board flexibility to exceed the property tax cap if it is deemed necessary, and to ensure that any state recalculation of the applicable limit will not make the village inadvertently out of compliance. And whereas pursuant to Section 20 of the Municipal Home Rule Law of New York State, of the State of New York, a public hearing must be held on the adoption of proposed local law number 4 of 2025, local law to override the 2025-2026 tax cap limit. Notice of such public hearing published in the official newspaper Observer. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Village Board of Trustees of the Village of Fredonia hereby schedules a public hearing on Wednesday, the 16th day of April, 2025 at 6 p.m. in Trustees Room, 2nd floor in Village Hall, 911 Church Street, Fredonia, New York, to receive comments on the proposed local law, and be it further resolved that the village clerk is hereby directed to publish notice of said hearing pursuant to village law. It is in the clerk's office, available for you to read.
And I'll second that.
Okay, Trustee Twitchell.
Aye.
Trustee Wandell.
Aye.
Trustee Syracuse.
Aye.
Trustee Brockler.
Aye.
And Trustee Esperson is an aye. Whereas pursuant to Section 5-5083 of the New York State Village Law, a public hearing must be held on the tentative budget for the village fiscal year commencing June 1st, 2025, with notice of such public hearing published in the official newspaper, The Observer. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Village Board of Trustees of the Village of Fredonia hereby schedules a public hearing Wednesday, the 16th day of April at 6:30 p.m. in Village Hall, 2nd floor, 911 Church Street, Fredonia, New York, to receive comments on the 2025-26 fiscal year tentative budget, which is now on file at the office of the Village Clerk of the Village of Fredonia, and be it further resolved that the Village Clerk is hereby directed to publish notice of said hearing pursuant to village law.
Second.
Trustee Twitchell?
Aye.
Trustee Wandell?
Aye.
Trustee Syracuse?
Aye.
Trustee Brockler?
The tentative budget isn't actually on file yet, though.
It's not final until we approve it.
Until we approve it, yes.
Right.
Aye.
Okay, and Trustee Espers is an aye as well. Thank you very much. Okay, today we're looking at the fire budget. Chief Myers is here. Go ahead, Chief. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I have a lot of information and some has been passed out already. The first sheet that you're looking at is our current budget for 24-25. I brought this up because I think this is it's a good segue into as we start discussing next year's budget. You can see here we had the trustees approved budget is the first column, and then the second column is back in February when we saw each department saw budget cuts. Those numbers are reflected there as well, including the contractual line of the fire that went up because of the town of contract expenditures associated with that. So what I really wanted to point out was at the bottom of the page, if you look at the total budget for fire EMS, and then also that civil defense line is calculated. In there, it's 1.5, so $1,587,000 is our operating cost. The hard revenue, which is detailed below, and I say hard revenue because those are facts, those are what reports were given to me. Our revenue was $1,109,519. So in the green, our true operating cost for career staffing, fire, and advanced EMS response for Village of Fredonia and Town of Pomfret is $477,481.
I think the only pushback I would have on that is the town of Poplar contract, that $540,000 doesn't all come to the village.
Yes, sir, I was anticipating that.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
And that, so I do count all of it as revenue because it is counted in expenditures. So if you look at that contractual, fire contractual line, our payment to the volunteer fire company is in there. So if we're counting it as an expenditure against the department, then I'm gonna count it as income for the
Okay.
so that wasn't counted. Considerations, right, I know we're all fighting for our piece of the pie, but considerations that the fire department is the most expensive department, I feel is not an accurate statement, and I've reflected that here. Are there any questions with that I might be able to answer at this point?
For your EMS revenue, is that what you've actually received, or is that what you should be receiving?
That is what we've actually received. So that number of $556,074, that was for the entire year of 2024. I have a breakdown here that I can go over each month, but yeah, that total number is pure data.
What was the projected?
The projected was 800,000.
Right.
And that was basically brought to us, that was landed on for a number of reasons. One is we did numbers on how many EMS transports we do and what we bill, and then the average miles that we go. That number was about 1.3 million for 100% of cost recovery. Myself and Alyssa sat down, we said, listen, we know we're never gonna get 100%, what are we comfortable projecting? And we projected 800,000. If the observer's listening, it's a projection, right? I can't make people pay their bills, nor can the Board of Trustees, so that was the educated guess, and I emphasize educated guess that we went off of, and we'll talk about that when I present next year's budget. I've reduced that number to a more 100% attainable number. We'll cover that when we go over this year's budget. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Alyssa, were you involved in, or assisting the chief producing these numbers? So you've gone over these?
The current ones?
The ones that he just passed out today, so that all the stuff is up to date.
I did
Okay.
this sheet here. I mean, I'm sure he got this from the report I gave him, but I did the other sheet.
Okay, thank you.
All right. If there aren't any questions with this current year's budget, I'd like to move on to, you want to start with projected revenue? I think that's the order of what we went last year. So I also passed out this year's proposed budget. This is what I presented to the mayor by December 31st. It's a 4-page document breaking down fire lines, EMS lines, projected revenue. And then the last page is the capital projects requests that I submitted. So page 3 is the projected, I apologize, page 4 is the projected revenue. I can go over that with you. Again, you see the potential revenue is just shy of 1.3 million. We've already kind of discussed that that's not achievable. I estimated a projected income of $550,000. We already went above that this year. The reason I'm confident, even more confident saying that, is because if you remember a few months ago, we increased the rates that we would be billing. So for an EMS BLS rate, that increased by 20% that the insurance pays. So I'm real comfortable with that number, 550. However, if we want to reduce that to 500 or 400 or 300, I'm okay with that as well, because anything else would just be a bonus at that point.
I just want to ask, so you're projecting what you will be collecting, right? This isn't a hard number, that it's not an actual, this is just a projection, because,
So-
you know, what I'm thinking of for the past 2 years, you said 800,000, and that kind of got us in trouble with your service. And for me, if you're trying to figure out a budget, it should be exactly the number, maybe a little bit above that, what you've collected for the year. So I think your projections were really off. So,
Yeah, so I alluded to why we came to that number. And I think we've had conversations about this before. I don't think we should be counting revenue at all in our overall budget. Because there's nothing saying we're gonna get it. Every single person
Right.
cannot pay their bill tomorrow. The number I provided a second ago, going over this year's contract, or this year's budget, that is hard numbers. We have collected that much.
You know, I guess I would say, other than the real property tax revenue, everything else is projected. Everything's projected. Every number is. We don't
Right.
know what our safety inspection fees are gonna be, what public
Right.
safeties,
Right.
we don't know. So you have to project something, or you can't make a budget.
Yeah, and the projections are based off data, right? If you look at this, the page 4 that we're talking about right now, you know, it shows how many calls we do, and if we collected 100% of it, it would be almost 1.3 million. We know that's not gonna happen, right? So that's not a true projection. So last year, or current year, that's why conversations happened and we reduced that to 800,000, because again, it's a projection. I mean, we assumed it was safe to say that 3/4 of our patients would pay their bill. That wasn't the case. So that's why we came in at 556,000. So missed the mark a little bit, but those are all projections. So if, my ask to you is we shouldn't be balancing our checkbook on EMS revenue, because it's just a projection. I'm projecting it the best way I can, based off how many calls we run, our recovery rate, our billable rate. I know those, so that's how I project this.
I think having a projection of 550,000 is pretty safe, considering this year we've received 556.
Right, that's what I was thinking is, seems like you targeted 550 because you collected 556 last year, correct?
Well, it's twofold, yes, because that stayed below what we are currently collecting, but also because I know 3 months ago, we increased the rates. So I think our number for next year is gonna be higher than 550, but I'm comfortable saying 550, because anything over that, I do think it's gonna go higher, just based off statistics, and we increased our rates. So even if the call volume stays the same amount of people pay their bills, you know, let's say 75% pay their bills, that number's still gonna be higher just because we've increased the rates as well.
However, there's still assumptions, correct?
The whole thing's an assumption, yes,
right,
absolutely.
And assumptions are, they're just that, they're assumptions.
Yep, but this is a projection off of an educated projection.
Right.
So yes, it's an assumption,
Right.
but it's not like I just threw a number up the wall.
No, I get it.
Yeah,
You've got some historical data. that
Absolutely, yes.
Support that number.
yes.
We have danced around the subject of residents that don't get billed over what the insurance company's gonna pay, and Alyssa and I did a little breakdown, and it was 90-some, almost 100,000
Yes.
that wasn't collected because we don't collect from residents above and beyond what their insurance pays. You know, I don't know if that's something we want to consider doing, but I think it's a discussion that needs to be, that we need to have that discussion. Maybe not right now, but that discussion needs to be had.
I don't think people would be too happy with that because they're paying taxes to begin with, and what
Yep.
are they getting for their money?
Well, they're getting an ambulance that'll show up
Right,
at their house. They're
Right.
getting a fire truck that will show up at their house. They're getting police that show up at their house.
right,
I
but
mean, it's not like they're not gonna get the service. They're getting the service.
they are, that's true.
They're, as far as we could tell, and Chief and I and Alyssa and Anne Marie have looked, there was no prior law that was passed not to collect it. There's not been a resolution not to collect it. It's just past practice. So there's nothing that says we can or cannot. It's just what we decide to do or not to do. So I suggest we give that some thought, and then when we sit down next Monday or Tuesday to go over the actual budget, we think about that and have that discussion. All right?
So it would be 100,000?
That's
close to
about,
that,
that's
90
about what it
to
was
100?
over the last year and a half or so.
Roughly, yep.
Yeah.
So you're basing it on the number of calls and the number of residents.
We're basing it on the number of. 'cause
The actual numbers
The
that-
actual
Actual
number,
numbers, okay.
I have a question, real quick. The first page, toward the bottom, Town of Pomfret contract, 540K. Is
Yes.
that, can you just elaborate on that? Like, is that contract, what's the duration? When is that renewed?
Yeah, so the Town of Pomfret contract was just renewed earlier this year for the next 3 years. It's a 3-year increment. Town of Pomfret contract for this year is $540,489. Next year it goes to $549,000, and I don't have it in front of me, but the next year it raises like another $6,000,
yeah.
is safe to say. What Trustee Esperson was referencing is 33% of that goes to the volunteer fire company.
Volunteers.
Okay, also known as Fredonia Volunteer Fire Department. Trustee Esperson mentioned of, well, it doesn't come back to us, so we can't count all of it. I answered with, we can count all of it because we're counted as expenditures. It's in my budget under fire contractual, that payment to them, so that's why I count it. If we're gonna count it against us, we gotta count it for us. So he's accurate, but he's also not accurate. Does that make sense how I'm explaining that?
Yeah,
Okay.
And, so with that money, they have purchased equipment. They have a
Correct.
fund, they help with the down payment on the fire truck, so it's not like that money is, being
Right.
spent frivolously. They're using it to help the fire department out as well, so. Chief? Go ahead.
Going back to this year's proposed budget, the revenue page, if there aren't any further questions on ambulance revenue, the next line is the Accounts Advocacy Agency is who handles debt collection when an EMS bill does not get paid from our EMS billing, professional ambulance billing. So this year, for calendar year 2024, we recovered $11,306. I proposed $11,000 just based off those stats. That is very much open to discussion. If we want to lower that, not include it at all, I'm open to conversate, but that was a source of revenue this year, so I wanted to put it on there for next year. And then the next line is the town of contract, it's listed there, trustee Wendell. You can see
Yeah.
2026, 2027, the increases there.
Got it.
So that reflects for this year, 540,498. That's because for the public, we provide fire and EMS to the town of Pomfret, so they contracted with us, the Village of Fredonia, to do so. And then the next line of that is we get reimbursed from the state for our EMS recertifications, both EMT and paramedic level. I've done the math there below, showing how many EMTs, what they, $300 reimbursement, and then paramedics, a $500 reimbursement. People have different recertifications dates, so I just took the average there, saying that 16 providers, so we're gonna average 4 a year. So that's where that number came from of 1,650. Again, that's revenue that's coming back in and ultimately going to the general funds through the treasurer's office, so I'm gonna count it here under fire revenue. So at the bottom, that's where I got the number of $1,103 or 139. So 1.1 million is our revenue. Again, I'm very confident saying that just based off of this year's, how we had that same number as definite revenue. So we could discuss that word projected all day, but I'm pretty comfortable with it. Are there any questions with those 4 income lines?
well, for fire protection, I mean, it is 33% that the volunteers get, and it's up to them. Is that correct? On how they want to spend that
Yeah.
money?
Yeah,
There's
the volunteer
certainly-
fire company is a non-for-profit.
Right.
No one can ask
Right.
them what they're spending their money on. That's completely up to
Exactly.
them.
But you can't demand them to spend their money, you as a fire chief.
Well, if they're getting money
Mm-hmm.
that is for fire and EMS protection, they are going to spend it on supporting
Mm-hmm.
fire and EMS protection. I
They
don't see any other way.
Yeah, they've always done that in the
Right.
past.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they're
Yeah.
not. I never said that.
Yeah, and I wouldn't, it may not be
Yeah.
100%, but it's,
Right,
you know,
right. But I mean, just not to forget that
yeah.
part of it, right.
Yeah, and that decision to give them 33% is, or 35% is really up to the village. That's not my decision.
Exactly.
The town of Pomfret and the village of Fredonia enter a agreement. They,
That's been
they
historically
being the
the way.
volunteers, they accept the terms and
Right.
sign the contract, but they don't have a fire department. You have a fire department. We are the fire department.
volunteers, right, mostly took care of fire protection in the village. I know 20 years ago, we only had 6 paid firemen, so
Yep.
that's what I'm just thinking of things in those terms.
No, I'm with
just
you.
to let
Unfortunately,
know.
though, it's not, and I don't mean this in a deceitful way,
that's
it's not
okay.
20 years ago.
It's
We're dealing
changed,
with very
right.
different
Things have changed.
different
right.
things. Our payroll reflects a
Right.
higher number than it did 20 years
Costs
ago.
go up, and
Sure.
I know the cost for the ambulance, the items that you buy.
Yes, yes.
I do recall that too. Those are you projecting those to be going up?
Yeah, we haven't explored that yet, but that's
Supplies,
next.
okay.
Where would the board like to go next? Would you like to go to my proposed capital purchases
Yeah,
or
let's
go
talk
to
about that
capital?
first, yeah.
So this was proposed to the mayor December 31st. You have a copy of exactly what was given to him. I requested the need for $22,000 worth of PPE, personal protective equipment. That's the fire gear that we wear. A breakdown of that is as such. A set of PPE is about $5,500. If we remember, 2 years ago, we had to spend $84,000 between budgeted and ARPA funds because all of our fire gear was expiring. We got to that point because we were not replacing 2, 3, 4 sets a year. So I requested 4 sets this current year. It was taken out of capital reserve. I requested another 4 sets this year. It was again taken out of capital reserve. We have a real need for 2 sets. I need 2 sets. Bryce Fisher is in the fire academy now. He's wearing used gear. When he returns, it's really needed that we outfit him with a set of gear that is fitted for him so that he can perform his duties. And then Tim Winters is retiring in June, so ultimately we will hire his replacement. That individual will need a set of gear as well. That's why I'm saying there's a real need for 2. What it's not counting is any volunteers that join. Any volunteers that join, I can't outfit them. I've asked the volunteer fire company to pay for a few sets of gear. They have told me no. They have told me that that is a village responsibility because it's an OSHA requirement, so they are not going to pay for any gear. So I'm standing in front of you saying I really need 2, but, you know, that could change. But I just know for a fact right now I need 2, so that's what I'm coming to you with.
And I know the power load system for the new ambulance. Can you talk about that? Is there an issue with one of those ambulances that
Yeah, so we have 3.
needs to be fixed?
Yeah, so I'd like to, thank you. We have 3 ambulances, right? Our newest ambulance is ambulance
Right.
13. When ambulance 13 was slated for delivery, last year, I wrote in to our capital expenditure a new power load system for ambulance 13, our newest ambulance. It's a $35,000 purchase. The volunteers were willing to split half of it. That's kind of reflected there. So our
Right.
cost would have been $17,500. That was taken out of the capital reserve due to budget restraints, so we didn't purchase that. So what I did is I took the power load out of our oldest ambulance, our reserve ambulance, ambulance 15, and I put that in ambulance 13 because 13 is our first out. It should have the power load. So we didn't buy one. So we have 2 of our 3 ambulances have power load systems in there. What you're referring to is our backup ambulance, our second out. If there's 2 EMS calls that thing gets used regularly, that's ambulance 12.
Right,
About, I don't know, 5 months ago, the power load system and the stretcher started having problems where I needed to get those serviced and ultimately repaired. Because of budgetary constraints, I couldn't do that. So that
Right,
ambulance has been
right.
parked. So when we start talking about maintenance money, when we get to individual line items,
Right.
I'm gonna kind of talk on that of,
Okay.
I'm starting the year already, you know, allocating thousands of dollars for repair from this year. So I'll talk
Right.
more on that, but
okay, thank you.
you're welcome. So yeah, going to that, you know, of the three things that I propose, even miscellaneous building repairs, I'm well aware that we're in a time of need and I'm okay going without. But I really do need to stress that we need to buy 2 sets of gear. I would like and request that that's put back into the budget.
I think that's something that's their safety, they need to have that, we're required to provide them that, I don't see how we can not do that. So 2 sets is what, $11,000?
I have hard numbers here, apologize.
How long
Yeah, that's
does-
just buying the jacket, pants, and boots. We do have some helmets that are still serviceable.
Okay.
Gloves, hoods are still serviceable, so I
Right.
do want to explain that that purchase is just the minimum of
It's
the
just the
jacket, the
minimum?
pants, and the boots fitted for them.
How long does it take to, after it's ordered, how long does it take to get it?
Anywhere from 3 to 4 months, depending on their factory time.
And that's obviously custom made for the officer, right?
For the individual, yes,
the
the salesman would come,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
fit that individual for, I say custom gear, but it's more gear fitted for them.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, some cases we run into if really it's more applicable for our volunteers, if one person has gear that's fitted for them and they resign or they move elsewhere and we get another member and it's close, I'll put him in it. I won't
Is
get
it returned? Okay.
No, we'll keep it, but
Right,
yeah,
that's
if
what I
you
mean.
resign and Paul joins
Right.
and John, and he can
Right.
fit in your gear, then now that becomes his gear.
So
it's not like
that
it's,
would be,
right, it's not
Well,
like it's
how-
garbage.
I know, how is that shared then? I mean, is it just like any other clothing? You know, I mean, you talk about fitted, is it, you know, size, like a size 42? or-
Yeah, fire gear is size, it's a chest
Yeah,
size.
how does that-
Length size,
Okay.
that's for the jacket, and then pants is obviously your waist and
Okay.
how long they go. That's why someone like me, right, if I left tomorrow, my gear belongs to Fredonia Fire Department. It
Right.
stays there.
Right.
Finding someone of my height that's gonna fit in it is probably not,
Yeah.
not that good of a chance, but the average person, we can usually use their gear again. And gear has a 10-year lifespan, in case I missed that.
Okay,
I'm sorry, you were looking for the number. Yeah, 4,000, yeah, so 9,600, basically, $9,537, 66 cents.
Chief, basic question.
Yes.
As opposed to purchasing, is renting gear an option?
I've never heard of that, no.
Right. I
I've
mean,
never heard of leasing
in
gear.
industry, like uniforms that are PPE, that are OSHA certified, you know, there are various companies that rent, and they have like a fee they would charge per month or whatever.
Yeah, I could ask my salesman, I've never heard that, I've been doing this a while, I've never heard
Right.
it, and I would be surprised just because of how custom it is, because of
Right.
a salesman's going to measure me, you know, my arms are the same,
Okay.
so I
Plus, that stuff, they have an expiration date, right?
10 years.
Yeah,
10
so-
years.
10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, so what we try to do, what I've tried to do, and the future budgetary constraints will drive this, right, is you don't want to wait till that 10-year mark to replace gear, because then, like kind of the example I gave of 2 years ago, you're replacing numerous sets at once. What I like to do is so we'll use Bryce Fisher for an example. One of these sets of gear would go to him. 5 years from now, I would look to buy him another set. So for 5 years, he would have 2 sets. That accomplishes 2 things. One, if something happens to the gear, rips, tears, gets a lot of blood exposed to it, is in a structure fire, something that requires cleaning, it allows us to take that gear out, clean it the right way, the safe way, and he still has a set of gear to protect him and the community. So that's some of that. A lot of us don't have 2 sets of gear just because budgetary reasons, but that's my overall plan would be that.
So we'll put that back and, or put at least 2 sets of gear in, see where that brings us.
so that would be 11,000, correct? For 2 sets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chief, what's going on with the roof and I know you showed me, I think it's the rear section does it need a whole new roof or?
The roof you asked?
Yeah, in the rear of the building.
Yeah, so our building is broken down into 3 different sections, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
What you're referring to is the section above the apparatus bay, that has a leak. Remember when the village had the study done? There was a roofing company that came to when they came, they said, yes, this roof is, I think they put it in colors, like red or whatever. They said that this roof is like the worst, needs replacement. It was wrote into last year's budget, it was removed. I didn't even put it in this year's budget, I just didn't think it was a thing, but yes, that needs to be replaced.
But it's causing damage, you say?
Yeah, it's stripping down and ruining the insulation on the inside side. Anytime it rains, we just put a bucket there. It's one hole, it's very manageable right now, but could that change tomorrow? It could, I'm not a roofer.
Is there any way of fixing that hole other
No,
than?
because it's where all the seams are. You know, the step in the back corner, that's what the roofing guy said, that's why it would need, not only because of that hole specifically, but because of the age of it. He's like, you're gonna start having problems, that's why he recommended.
How old is that?
To my understanding, that portion is the original, so from the 80s. The other portion above the offices, that has been redone since the building has been built, so that's why we haven't had any problems as of right now with that.
Hey, Chief, if we can go back for a second to
Yes.
the PPE, when does the officer in the academy, when is he graduating?
Bryce Fisher, he's in the academy right now, it's called the Recruit Academy. He
Yeah.
graduates May 22nd.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay. You want to go through your budget?
We can go through the lines, yes?
Yep.
So I guess we could look at both documents as far as what our list has provided, and then the one I provided to the mayor, because that has a little more substance, however you would like me to go through it.
So Alyssa, right off the bat, what is this 87,000 that's cut out of personnel?
So it's for the part-time clerk and two new employees.
Okay.
So we kind of talked about this yesterday in another meeting, but when Alyssa sent me her breakdown of personnel, it was not showing, it was showing when Tim Winters came off, he's due to retire at the end of June, we've discussed that. Alyssa's spreadsheet wasn't showing his replacement. I don't know if that's, we need to talk about that now, but I'm under the impression that when he leaves, we'll replace him. I mean, at this point, we are contractually obligated to have minimum staffing. So not replacing him would be a grave mistake because it would lead to an insane amount of overtime.
Yeah, we need to budget for his is that what's cut out of in this 87?
There's a portion, yep, that's a portion of it.
Yeah, we can't, I don't think at this point we can plan for them.
I guess we'd have to see what the new contract looks like.
I would be more comfortable with having it in there and then being able to take it out. Because otherwise, if the new contract comes through and we have to replace him and we didn't budget for it, that's an extra, 87,000 that we didn't account for. That's way too much money to have to spend that we didn't plan for.
Yeah, so our overall, just fire personnel line, that will look a little lower than it does this year because a new hire is going to cost us a lot less than Lieutenant Tim Winters cost us, so.
Correct.
Well, that would be the number that we would put in there then.
Correct.
The cost
Correct.
of a new hire.
Correct, for 11 months, because Tim's retiring the end of
Right.
June, so we need to count his first
Right.
30 days,
Yep.
which I don't think's in there.
And
I-
so far as a clerk goes, I know you wanted to discuss maybe sharing Chuck's clerk or the building inspector's clerk.
Yeah, so I mean, I know some of the details were discussed in executive session, so I can't talk too much, but
Okay,
it was my understanding that the fire department clerk was leaving us, which she did. with the intention of writing it back in for this year.
And that was to cover the cost of a new hire, if I remember right.
No, that was to cover the cost of Brendan going to paramedic school,
Oh, that was it. Okay,
Yes.
you're correct.
which at the end of the day,
Right.
the volunteers covered anyways, so.
I think at this point, I don't know that we are able to write you back in a part-time clerk. I know we had discussions about the expectation of sharing the codes office clerk with your office as well. I don't know where that ended up.
Well, I think as I remember, the expectation was that she would work in codes for a period of time until she learned that job,
Right.
because it takes a while to learn it. And then she would,
Yeah, and then the
She-
two department heads would discuss amongst yourselves,
right,
a
figure out where,
schedule.
yeah.
So the number of hours that she would work for the fire department would be under their cost, right, for personnel?
Should be charged to them.
It should be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if they're sharing
Right.
that cost,
It,
yeah.
it would be shared, the cost. Am I
Right.
correct about that? Okay.
But at the end of the day, the cost is still the same to
Yeah.
the village.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But
it's just
We
what
would
the
just
county
shift
gives
from-
you
out.
would just want to
yeah.
make clear that part of that cost was coming from the fire department.
Sure, once it's determined, it's also then
Exactly.
solidified that no matter what's happening, you know, if her 2 days or 3 days or however many days, she is at that fire department.
So
Well,
my suggestion would be
We'll have
that,
to talk more about that.
yeah, that the mayor sit
We will.
down with, fire chief and Chuck and come to some resolution on
Yeah.
that.
All right, so, going further down, everything basically got cut.
So equipment can we go right down the list?
Yep.
Would that
Sure.
be okay?
Go ahead.
So equipment safety, my proposed budget to the mayor was 16,000. That was cut to 10,000, so it was cut by 38%. My difficulty with this is our current year's budget. I was budgeted 12,000. That was cut down to 3,700, so it was cut by 69% in our current budget. So again, I'm behind the curveball. I haven't bought things that we need, safety things, you know, gloves, vests, lights, you know, I could go down the list, I could talk for hours, but, going down to 10,000, it's gonna hurt. If that needs to stay at 10,000, then I will make it work. But it's gonna hurt, and we're not gonna be able to outfit the department trucks, personnel with the things that I really should be, and continuously updating our equipment. Some
The
exam,
ac-
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, the current actual budget, I'm looking at the mayor's budget, for equipment safety was a little over $2,500.
Where are you looking,
Currently,
I'm sorry?
that's our current
What he
That was
spent.
the current
I think we-
spending as of March 13th, 2025.
Yeah, that's because it was reduced February 1st, reduced to 3,700. So all of my planned purchases went out the window. Yeah, I think there's still around $1,000 left in it, but I purposely don't execute my budget the first 6 months because these guys go out for a call and break a tool, I have to have money left in there to replace it. So
Right.
when all that money was taken away, which is, it's okay, we're getting, you know, we're making it work. But,
Well,
I obviously
that's-
haven't spent it because it wasn't there.
Yeah.
We had discussed in the first budget meeting that, and I typically always did it too, you know, looking at what they had actually spent for that year to determine if they truly needed an increase, if we could live with the decrease. This year, we can't do that because of all of the budget adjustments that we made.
Will that continue into next year, though, for the spending, Alyssa? If we go over that?
What do you mean?
Amount.
I'm sorry.
It-
Well, we have to adjust the budget
We're
and
going to have
reduce.
to, right. that's
I guess we'll
what
s-
my
I
concern
guess
is.
We have to continue to monitor
Right.
the.
Yeah.
Right, but what I'm saying is
Right.
you can't just assume that he
Right.
can only have $2,000 in equipment safety because he only spent
Because he-
$2,500.
How much more did you need then?
I would assume all of it.
Do you
but-
have, I'm asking the chief,
What is your question, I'm sorry?
how much did you need over that $2,500 for equipment and safety?
No, I think you're looking at what was spent, I think,
She is.
The
the
She-
mayor,
actual
the mayor cut
budget.
it, the mayor
Right.
cut it to 10,000.
She's
Right.
asking you, this year you only spent $2,500. How much more would you have liked to spend?
Well, it was budgeted for 12,000, so I would like to spend another 9,500.
And that would include,
So I'll explain some things if I may, on equipment safety. So that counts for nozzles, miscellaneous equipment like a burst hose that we might replace. Again, going back to hose is another great example. If I wait till 1 year and buy all new hose, it's gonna cost us about $220,000. So the goal is to replace 5, 10, 15 lengths a year to make it more digestible. Miscellaneous equipment includes the gloves that we wear for the PPE, both extrication gloves and fire gloves. The hoods, the Nomex hoods, those, get burned through, they get soiled, they need to be replaced. Boots, helmets that go with them, all the parts associated with that, safety glasses, safety goggles, all kinds of stuff. All the repairs that are covered under those set items, that comes out of equipment safety, so if we have to send someone's jacket out, cause it was ripped when they were cutting a car open or something, that would be
Right.
under equipment safety. What else? Firefighter bailout systems, that's a big one that comes out of there. Those have shelf life on them as well. So do the associated harnesses that they wear with their gear for that bailout systems, which is required by law for them to have. The rope for the firefighter equipment.
Can we go back? Can you explain what the bailout system is, please?
Yeah, so bailout systems for firefighters, so state law requires anything, if we're fighting fire on the second floor or above, where the interior firefighter are required by. Sorry about that. So if a firefighter, interior firefighter is fighting fire, basically doing their job, on the second floor or above, they're required by law to have a bailout system. Bailout system incorporates the harness, the pouch, the carabiner, the hook that they hook to the window, the rope or webbing, whatever they're outfitted with.
Right.
And then requires them to have annual training, proficiency training, showing that they're able to. That's a separate under training branch, but,
do
so
we
that-
have that now?
we have that
Josh?
now, yes.
Okay.
But that's under a 10-year lifespan as well, so that's why, again, I
How
try
old
to.
are they?
The ones we have now are about 7 years old. But what we have is for who we have, right? So we had a
You mean
volunteer.
they fit the fire?
No, meaning like we don't have extra. Like,
You don't have extra?
right,
Okay.
we have, if I count the career, if I count the career of 14, we have 16 interior firefighters. We have 16 systems.
And they each have to have their own?
They each have to have
set?
their own, yes.
Can you, what are they?
They're personal escape systems. So if I'm up here doing my job and I get cut off by fire right here and I have to go out of a window, there's two options. There's either a ladder there, if the ladder was
Right.
built, if the building was laddered, or I have this system on me that I pull out a hook and I hook it to the windowsill and I can bail out. That's why they're called bailout systems,
Okay.
personal bailout systems. So that's what they are.
And that's just for each personal fireman?
That is on their gear, so
On their
yes,
gear.
yes, they don't share that. Some departments have those systems integrated into their SCBA's, we don't, and we probably will never. There's benefits to both. It's a benefit for each person to have their own. So once you buy that, right, those aren't, they don't use them for training, that's a real world, they need it. So there's really not too much replacing them unless they use them or they get damaged or they're out of their shelf life or we get a new interior firefighter. If a volunteer joins, becomes an interior, I have to outfit them with one. So we don't have any extra. So that's also in there,
So
right?
we don't have any extra?
We do not have any extra.
Did
We
you
have
say?
enough for every single person that needs one right now.
And 7 years is the one that's the oldest one that needs to be
They're all
replaced?
purchased together.
Okay,
So in another,
I'm just
if
trying
I
to
don't buy
figure
it,
that out.
no, absolutely. If I
Yeah.
don't buy any, another 3 years from now, I'm gonna be coming with
Mm-hmm.
an invoice saying I need to buy 16 of them. So I'm trying to avoid that
So-
and buy a few a year.
so you're requesting more money to purchase, how many more then would that be?
Well, it depends on how much is budgeted. You know,
This
all
is
of the things
the-
I'm naming right now
right,
fall
right.
under equipment safety. So
Right,
if that number
exactly.
that I requested at 16,000, if it ends
Mm-hmm.
up being 12,000, well, I probably won't buy 4 of those. I'll probably buy 2 of those, so I have
That's
money
what
for
I'm-
other
I'm
things.
trying to get at.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. I can't
Yeah.
answer that, right, because it's,
Okay,
if I was, if I was awarded the 16,000 that I
Mm-hmm.
requested, then I would buy 4 this year. I would buy 4
Okay.
of those, and it would leave enough for
so you would be
everything else.
happy with just purchasing 2 at this point?
Happy? I don't think
Happy?
happy is the right word.
No?
No?
Well-
You have to understand, right, and my job is to be delicate to the overall village position.
Right,
But my job is also to keep my department safe. They need the tools to do their
right,
job.
right.
So,
I mean, I want them to be safe too, but
Yeah.
I'm just thinking
Yeah,
this is
if
for
we had-
this year's budget,
if
you
we,
know,
if I
how
was
we can
awarded
cut
money to buy 2 of them,
corners.
then I would buy
Yeah.
2.
That's,
simple as that.
that's all I'm asking. I'm not, you know, presenting an issue,
Right.
you know, for non-safety.
Right.
You know, what can we, you know, do right now to be
Right.
safe?
Right,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Chief, I have a question along
Yes.
those lines. A few months ago, you published something addressed to us regarding New York State, OSHA, and maybe NFPA safety requirements.
Yes.
And as I recall, there were things that we currently, your department does comply with, but then there are things that you do not. Is that correct?
That would be a correct statement, yes.
Right, okay. So part of the things, what I'm trying to understand is the things that are outstanding that you're not currently complying with, is that what you're addressing with some of these safety needs?
I'll answer, let me know if I don't answer your question with this explanation. So that's why I'm budgeting a little every year. Because all of the PPE, their personal protective equipment, everything from the helmets to the boots to the full gear to those bailout systems to the SCBAs they wear, they all have shelf life. So what I mean by shelf life is how long I can keep it in service from the manufacture date.
Gotcha.
9 out of 10 items are 10 years, right? So they're allowed to wear that set of gear for 10 years. I mean, obviously, unless something happens that they ruin it or anything like that. But if nothing goes wrong, we can keep it in service for 10 years. We're doing okay in that department. At all of our gear, because of that large purchase we did 2 years ago, all of our interior firefighters are in gear that is in date. That's great. We would be in a very bad spot. I mean, we'd be fined if we weren't compliant with that. But that also goes with the hose, right? Our fire hose. We have hose on our apparatus that is not within date. Well, what does that mean? That means I, as a fire chief, do a risk assessment and say, is it worth keeping in service or is it not? So I've strategically placed those hoses on our second out apparatus that might not need it. So I've strategically done that. We were just awarded a grant. We wrote a grant for hose, fire hose, and we were awarded that grant. So we're saving taxpayers about $88,000. So that's huge. We're looking to purchase that this year. Unfortunately, it's not going to get everything we need. Our grant was awarded to us about $8,000 less. So we'll still be needing to purchase some through our money and through the volunteer fire company's money. But it puts us in a really good spot. So anything that has been out of date, we're doing a good job to get it within compliance. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, if you go beyond 10 years, then you're out of compliance.
Correct. Well, out of the lifespan, yes. Yeah, 9 out of 10 things, like everything I just named is 10 years. You know, some things might be 15, but everything we're talking about today is 10 years. Gear, SCBAs,
Right.
everything like that is 10 years.
So are there any other grants that could help us?
We submit for a grant every single year.
Great.
We submitted for
Yeah.
a hose grant last year, we were denied, we didn't get it. So we resubmitted this year, and we got it this year. So every year, we put in for grants. 2 years, 2.5 years, 3 years ago, we were awarded an SCBA grant. So we saved taxpayers $220,000 on that. So, yeah, if there's a grant, we're going after it.
Great.
That is our first approach.
Okay, thank you.
I guess the next line that I really have a question about is for how much it was cut is the travel training. Just in anticipation of having a retirement. Is $8,000 enough to theoretically send somebody to both the academy and paramedic school?
So, yes, that was on my list as well, thank you. The short answer is no. Breaking it down further, paramedic school is captured under EMS training, because that was also cut, which we're talking about. But just fire training alone, that's not enough for 2 reasons. One, Bryce is currently in the academy now. Trustee Esperson asked a few minutes ago when he graduates. He graduates May 22nd. I will not receive or pay his invoice until next budget year. So although he's in the academy now, we're gonna pay for it next year. I could get a pro forma invoice now and pay for it.
We're still gonna pay for it out of this year.
Okay, perfect. So I'll get a pro forma invoice and pay for it out of this year. So if you look at the pass out I gave you, Trustee Syracuse, it kind of breaks down what I used as my budgeting tool for travel training. So the fire academy, I did put 2 vacancies. That should be 1, really, just with Tim Winters leaving, because we were able to get Bryce into this year. So that should reflect 1.
Okay.
Lieutenant Fisher will go to flips. That's required by law. He should have went already, but I've just been pumping the brakes with that because we're down people. You know, sending a medic away for a month is not advantageous. You know, also this covers our volunteer members' training. Anything they want to go to that might cost money, the volunteer fire company does a really good job at splitting that 50-50 with me, which is awesome. But it does cost us money, and they're more or less, they're doing us a favor. I mean, that responsibility is on us as the authority having jurisdiction to pay for any training. So I did write in 16,000. If we're paying for Bryce's out of this year, I'd be very comfortable with, you know, putting that number to about 10,000. But I would like to go from 8 to 10, if possible. There are things that we're shrinking the belt on, right? We normally send about 8 to 10 of our firefighters to state chiefs every June. I've already told them that I'm not doing that this year. If they want to go, we'll 100% be on the volunteers. So we're shrinking the belt where we can.
You have potentially 2 through paramedic program this year. Is that? What is that?
If we could, if it's okay, can we just finish up the fire one?
Yeah,
before we do
sorry.
EMS? No, it's okay. Under supplies, I requested 13, it was cut to 10. I'm okay with that. I'll make it work. You know, supplies are everything that we use around the firehouse, from batteries for our flashlights to SCBA parts to minitors, office supplies. I mean, you name it. If I'm able to classify it as supplies, it goes under there. I'm okay tightening the belt a little bit and going down to that 10,000. Contractual's good. Gasoline was reduced, but again, I'm okay with that. And the only other comment I'll make, it will be under the fire protection, the last line, maintenance equipment. I requested in my proposed budget to the mayor's 55,000. That was reduced by 18% down to 45,000. My only comment on there is twofold. One, we spent 45,000 this year, and there's repairs that I was unable to do because simply I ran out of money. In the same breath, though, I'll say this: we are slated to take delivery of those 2 new apparatuses that we purchased. The engine is due for delivery in July, which means October, you know, and the ladder truck is slated for delivery in October, so I'm expecting, you know, December, January. So our maintenance costs should go down, or will go down. It absolutely will go down when we have those new apparatus, because anything that goes wrong will be covered under warranty. So I just wanted to say that statement of, I'm okay leaving it because of that, leaving it at that 45,000. Does that make sense how I explain that?
Yeah.
Okay. Pardon me.
So 2 new trucks will be delivered later this year.
Correct, one fire engine, a
Right.
pumper, and
Right.
one ladder truck will be delivered. Those have been on order for about 2.5 years.
Okay. And then what happens with the existing?
So the existing will be sold.
Okay.
I already, I'll say interest, right, because we should do sealed bid process with those, but there is interest for that ladder truck. So I'm very
Right.
optimistic that we will sell that for probably more than we bought it for. We bought that apparatus for $20,000. We basically stole it.
Right.
We will turn a profit with that. The engine, which is engine 12, I think if someone buys it for a couple $1,000s, we take it. I mean, there's really no value. A collector's gonna wanna buy that. It has no value staying in service. It can't, it's too old, it's leaking everywhere. They would have to rebuild the whole pump. It's not an in-service fire apparatus, but someone will buy it. There's collectors out there that'll buy it. So, you'll see me, especially with the engine, you're gonna see me bring that to the board, relatively soon, probably within the next month or two. I'll be coming to the board asking for permission to put that up for sale, and try to get rid of that before we take delivery of the new one. All right, going to EMS now. Ambulance supplies would be the first one on my list, the first line. This current year was approved for 18,000. That was reduced to 10,000, was cut to 44%. I have gotten very creative with EMS supplies. I have begged, borrowed, and stole to make sure that we have the, to make sure that we're in service, basically. So I requested 22,000. What we're seeing with EMS supplies, and I wrote some notes that I want to reference, you know, just like everything else out there, EMS supplies, unfortunately, is the same. You know, we're seeing a 5 to 7% price increase on most items. I won't say all items, but most items. So 15,000, I don't see it cutting. I really don't. I mean, I would request that we go back to 18,000 that we've had the last 2 years. That I think is pretty in line with the needs, with the call volume that we're doing. You know, we need to replace those supplies. If it's
How
kept at
much of them are US produced and how much are,
Just gonna ask that.
because we could be looking at a much more substantial price increase.
I don't know that answer. I'm sorry. I can
Now,
get that
That
answer.
could be a difficult thing to know,
Yeah.
actually.
I know certain.
You might know that
Yeah, so a
answer.
lot of things are created in very random places. So like a few years ago when there was the saline shortage, it was, and medical supplies are also built in a weird way. You will have one factory and they will make medication A, they will make saline, and they will make medication B. And what they do is for 4 months, they make medication A, shut down, switch over, they now start making saline. So, like when the hurricanes hit down in the Bahamas, that's why there was a saline shortage, because it wiped out like before they were able to make their saline. So then for that whole chunk of time, so some stuff comes from overseas, some stuff comes from here. When the Carolinas just got wiped out, we were seeing shortages of stuff. So some of it comes from here, some of it doesn't. It's a,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you said 5 to 7% increase, you're.
That's what we're seeing.
Right.
That's what we're seeing
If
throughout the
You're
few
actually
years.
seeing that now.
We're actually seeing that,
Right.
yeah. And that's not on everything, right? I mean, something like gauze
Okay.
pads, we're not seeing a
Yeah.
7% increase in gauze
Yeah.
pads, but medicines, absolutely.
Right.
We're seeing that,
Right.
so that again is a projection. I could come back and say, hey, listen, I underestimated this, prices actually went up 10% with any tariffs or anything you might have brought up, but I'm
Right.
comfortable bringing that back to the board at that point.
Okay.
Chief, could you investigate the supply chains on the supplies?
I could, absolutely. So yeah, that was reduced to 15. I don't know what the board's appetite is to going back to 18. If it's at 15, my fear would be that I'm coming back the last quarter and asking for more.
More money.
So I'll leave that with you. Ambulance training. Requested 18,000. It was cut 72% down to 5,000. So here's the deal with EMS training, right? We hired Bryce Fisher. He's at the fire academy. He will be going to medic school. That will start in January or August, depending on where we send him. We, all intents and purposes, hire a replacement for Tim Winters. That's a paramedic position. I do not see us finding a paramedic, just like we're dealing with now with our new recruit Fisher. So I budgeted that we would send that individual to medic school as well. Some other EMS expenses when it comes to education are the mandatory continued educations that we see that we currently pay for. You know, we have a Target Solutions platform, we have the Advanced Life Support affiliated courses, that those together are almost $3,200. So really, I'm standing in front of you saying that the minimum is 12,000 that I know of, and that would mean any additional training I would have to say no to this year. If someone came to us and said, hey, look, there's this conference, I think I'd learn a lot, I don't disagree with you, but we just don't have the money. That would mean that 12,000 would be things that we absolutely are bare minimum for more or less. So going from that 18 requested down to 12, I think would be achievable.
Right. I mean, obviously, this doesn't even cover the one person that we already have hired for the paramedic program that needs it. So I think we put that back at 12. Because again, like I said, we can't anticipate at this point, I don't think, not being able to replace or not having to replace Lieutenant Winters.
Yeah, so with my budget process, I went off our current contract. If it takes us 2 months or it takes us 2 years to come to a new agreement, I still have to honor this current contract. So
Correct.
that's,
Yeah, let's keep in mind, so the suggestions we're making when trustee Syracuse says, let's move that to 12, that's up for discussion when we
Right.
actually hammer out but her suggestion right now is to raise that, so,
Yeah.
okay.
So when we have that general budget discussion, Alyssa, if you could provide us with the updated, like what it would look like with the additions from all the departments.
Yep.
now is that something department heads can attend? Because I saw that last year where I came
It's
to
an
my
open-
hearing and
it's an
some
open
things were
meeting.
justified and then it
Yeah.
was cut again, but I wasn't there to speak on it. per
It's
se.
an open meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd be
Right.
glad to have you
Yeah.
here.
The next line of EMS contractual, budgeted 60,000, was reduced to, reduced 13% down to 52,000. I don't think that's wise, for two reasons. One, the amount of PCRs we do, you know, we know the charge that we're gonna get. And this year, we'll have that, we purchased two automatic CPR devices. They're called Strikers. We purchased those a year and a half ago. And this coming budget year will be the first payment due. We pay one, the volunteers pay one. So our payment of 8,000 is due. That's in that EMS contractual. That's counted in there. So if we reduced it, I could see myself coming back asking for more money the last few months, which if that's how we want to proceed, I'm okay with that. But I think we would overshoot that number of 52,000.
How well do those work? Just kind of curious, because 20 years ago, I used to teach a lot of CPR, and at the time, the general wisdom was there were no automated systems that worked well.
Yeah, so these
Worked a
came
little too
about
well.
some years ago. We've had two, and the two that we had just both basically died on us. So that's why we had to purchase two. It's a device probably this tall. It's a piston, and it goes around a patient, and it secures to their backside with a back plate, for lack of better words. And if they push the button, it does automatic CPR at a perfect rate and a perfect depth, depending on adult or child. And really beneficial for our case,
Yeah.
because if we have a call, right, we have 3 people on shift, 2 of them go on a call, we get another call that might be CPR, that individual's alone. So having that ability to have automatic CPR has been, and that's, we currently have it, right, has been world changing. I mean, it's the best patient care in that situation. So it's really been beneficial. And I thank the volunteers for paying half of that, because if they weren't paying half, they would be paying 16,000. And that's just for this year and the next year, and it's paid off, right? So we were able to do that for 3 years, so we're in good shape.
So notice how many times Chief has mentioned the volunteers paying for stuff, or helping to pay for stuff. That's
Correct.
from the money that they
Yeah,
get
that's
from that
that chunk of
contract,
money.
so.
Yeah,
They do.
Yeah.
let me be as blunt as I
So-
can. If we were not a
Right.
combination department,
Yeah,
these lines would be double every single
Right.
year. So,
they do pay their fair share, right.
yep. Where are we at? Ambulance, gasoline, I'm okay with the reduction. Maintenance equipment, so I requested 12.5. That was, you know, I really proposed this before, if not right around the time of that other stretcher going out of service. So I'm not really sure if it encompasses that or not, but going down to 10,000, reducing it 20% to 10,000, I'm pretty confident I'll be back asking for more money. So if we keep it at 10, I'm okay with that. I think we're gonna see me spending about $3,000 or $4,000 right off the bat to repair ambulance 12, because it's not only a power load problem, but there's something wrong with the stretcher. So that's why it's out of service. Department of Health tells me if I keep that in service, patient gets hurt on it, we're liable. So I had to pull that out of service. I had no choice. So it's my intent that once a budget is published, it's my intent to get that serviced immediately, knowing that the invoice wouldn't come till after the new budget year. But I wish I had a hard answer. That could be 2,000 or it could be 6,000. I just don't know until he comes out, because he's gonna charge me $1,500 just to come out and perform preventative maintenance, and that's when he's gonna look at it. So he couldn't give me an answer, and that's why Alyssa told me to hold off, because we didn't know
Right.
if it, you know, what it was gonna be, so. So again, going back to it, I mean, going back up to 12,500 is really what I'm asking. If we're unable to do it, then I understand, but I'll just have to keep my eye on it and see how the year progresses. That covers all the maintenance for our ambulances. Anything goes on our ambulance, that's what it's covered on. Oil changes, inspections, all that stuff is under there for the 3 ambulances. And I actually think I cover the Tahoe in there as well. Comes out of that.
Just curious why the line item for personnel is duplicated between ambulance service and fire protection.
So Alyssa could probably elaborate more, but our overall personnel cost is just split in half.
Okay.
And half of it is fire, half of it is EMS. I don't know if you want to elaborate more, but.
That's pretty much just it,
Okay.
yeah.
Right.
Same with overtime.
That makes sense.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, and all those numbers I left up to Alyssa. I didn't really touch those, with the exception of she sent me a copy. Any other questions I can answer for you? I don't know if,
That's it.
Anybody have anything for Chief? Lisa?
No?
Anything else, Chief?
All set?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't believe so.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
So, for us, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, we're meeting with Louis and Dave. And then we've scheduled Monday, 9 o'clock with Chip, Chuck, and Kayla. However, many of those 3 are able to attend. We scheduled one for kind of a final hammering out session Tuesday at 9. That we tentatively scheduled that. I'm suggesting that because I don't think Monday's budget meeting with Chip, Chuck, and Kayla will go long, that we just extend that and hammer out,
And
try to
do
hammer
it
out
then.
and see if we can get it done. If not, then we'll meet again on Tuesday. So if you guys are amenable to that, then let's plan on spending longer Monday than we had originally anticipated, keeping in mind that's a board meeting
Would
date
we-
as well.
Well, we would be out by 2:30.
Oh,
right?
God,
'Cause
yeah.
I
Yeah.
have an appointment.
Yeah, no, it's, yeah.
Okay, I didn't think it would last that long.
If, you know, I would say if we go past noon, then
Yeah.
we'll come back the next
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Okay,
Is that all right with everybody?
sounds-
Yeah,
good.
cause we have our portion of the budget too to go through as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
so there's still stuff to go over, but,
sure,
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe we can,
okay.
if I'm gonna say finalize, with
Yeah.
air quotes around the word.
Or Alyssa, if you wanna let, all of the department heads know then that we'll be doing a final
On Monday.
on Monday.
And I'll have these for you guys tomorrow, since we're doing water sewer tomorrow, I'll have all
Great.
the.
Yeah.
Great.
you.
Would the ability exist for me, I'm on vacation next week, but I would like to call in for that. Could the option be available for that for me?
You can listen in,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It should be, I'm pretty sure Chip has it back up on YouTube again.
Yeah, I think we're
No, I'm
live.
saying in case there's any questions for me,
Oh, I see,
to,
yeah.
to kind of,
So you
Yeah.
can answer.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or I can just make myself available and you can call me if that's easier, you know, if there is anything pertaining to me, however you want
Right.
to handle it.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, you wanna sit here on speakerphone,
Okay,
struggle to
Chief,
hear.
Thank you very
We
much.
could have questions.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
That would be good.
Does anybody else have anything for today?
Nope.
Okay,
Make a motion that we adjourn.
is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Trustee Wandell?
Aye.
Trustee Brockler?
Hi.
Trustee Twitchell?
Aye.
Trustee Syracuse?
Aye.
I don't wanna stay any longer, so I'm gonna say aye.
Are you sure?
Thank you, everybody.